As I'm sure you're aware, this is the first deck from Chris Ramsay. Actually, it's not the first deck from Chris Ramsay, right? Chris Ramsay's released other decks. This is his second deck of his first edition. How can I say this right? Am I saying that right? Second deck, first deck edition. How would you say it? The V2's first, and this is his second deck. This is his first deck. First deck, second edition. All right, first playing cards. This is Chris Ramsay's very own independent line. It's a collaboration between himself and the artist, Abraham Garcia Sanchez. His first deck came out in May of 2018. This is his follow-up. This is his sophomore edition. Sophomore edition, I like that one. He printed 30,000 of these this time around. His first deck sold out, like, I think it was in hours. The second deck sold out in about a little over 10 hours. And if you were lucky enough to pick one up, they have started to arrive in people's homes right about now. If you don't know who Chris Ramsay is, he used to work for Murphy's Magic. He used to work for Illusionist. He lives out in Canada. He is a YouTube creator, and he currently has about 2 million subscribers. So at least 2 million of you out there know who he is. Yeah. But you don't want to hear me talk. You want to see these cards. The tuck case is all done in a soft, velvet to the touch, black matte tuck case. Usually matte paper is kind of like a rough feel. This is very smooth, very velvety. Its only accent is this gold metallic cigar band that wraps all the way around, and it says first right on the front. The bottom says First Playing Card Co. by Chris Ramsay, and the large tuck flap has Chris Ramsay's logo. And when you open the tuck case, you're gonna see a black lining that has gold foil first logos repeating throughout. That's everything I can say about this tuck case. Let's open it up and check out the wonders inside. These cards were printed for the United States Playing Card Company on their thin crush stock. USPCC makes the best cards in the world, don't even argue about it. The back design has a nice thin white poker border, and it's accented with a gold metallic border that wraps around as a frame. And it also pokes out on the upper left of both sides with the first logo again, thus creating a tiny little cigar band accent that you can see on the sides of the deck. With the first deck, the background was white. And so when you looked at the first cutaway that's up there, you kind of saw it more. I think now that it's mixed with a black and white, you kind of have to turn the deck at an angle to see that one ST. If you look at it from some angles, you can't even read it. But if you get it just right, then you can see it. So I think that effect is lost just a little bit with the black back, that it didn't have that same problem with the white deck. Other than that, this new edition is a reverse of the first, so the black is now the more prominent color, and Chris Ramsay's logo repeats both right side up and upside down in a repeating image. And no, it is not a marked back, don't ask. But that little first logo up in the corner will make some really cool fans and spreads. Chris is a magician, he is also a cardist, and so he's definitely gonna design a deck that's gonna appeal to both markets. With this deck, you'll get 2 Joker cards. It's kind of what the first deck looked like, the white backdrop with the first logo in the center, and it just says Jokers up in the corner. I like this better. His first deck had his logo, and I think that was probably good for him because, you know, it's his own deck, but when you're not Chris Ramsay, it's nice to have Jokers that just simply say Joker. With this deck, you'll get 2 other extra cards. You'll get an extra 4 of spades, which you can use for card to impossible location effects, which is always nice. I think a duplicate card is always gonna be a better gaff card than, say, some crazy 2-ended queen. And your other extra card is a golden coiled snake. Now, why a snake? Well, I think this is kind of an homage to David Blaine. You know, if you look at David Blaine's decks, his extra card is sometimes just like a random animal, like, say, an alligator. But Chris Ramsay has a snake in his CR logo, right? He has a snake in his CR logo. So you're not seeing the CR logo in this deck as prominently as you did in the first time around. So maybe this is his way of including the snake in this deck, just kind of like a little nod, like a little peek, like a little aha. Also, when you bust this deck out of the box, you're gonna notice that the cards are not in new deck order. They are actually in mnemonic stack. This is Juan Tamari's memorized stack. You'll simply cut the 9 of diamonds to the face, and you will have the deck in mnemonic stack. Now, why would you have a deck in mnemonic stack? Why is that helpful? Technically, it's only helpful if you know mnemonic stack. Like, it's a memorized deck that you have learned and you can utilize this. If you haven't learned mnemonica and you don't do tricks with it, this stack really doesn't help you, especially if you're gonna bust the deck open and look at it before you perform. The only reason to have a deck in mnemonic stack in a sealed deck is to do a sealed deck effect, right? You're gonna have a sealed deck of cards in front of your spectator. You're gonna say, this is a sealed deck of cards, here, check it out. Then you proceed to open the seal in front of them. You remove the ad cards, you cut the 9 of diamonds to the face, you do a false shuffle, and then you proceed to start. All the while, the spectator thinks, there couldn't be anything weird going on because I watched him open the deck in front of me, but you know the deck is now in a memorized stack. That's really the only reason to have a deck in mnemonic stack in a sealed deck, because otherwise, if you open it and no one's around to watch you, you can technically put any deck in mnemonic stack, right? Yeah. Your pips and indice cards, your blacks, your reds, they are going to be industry standard, which makes this deck perfect for everything you need a deck of cards for. Your court cards have all been recolored in a very muted gold and kind of like a burnt gray. You might remember the first deck had kind of like ghost-like faces and hands where they were kind of like washed out. I'm glad he went back to a more traditional court card. It makes this deck less suspectable and better for magicians. There's also one other little extra nod, a little extra gaff that's in this. If you pull out the King of Hearts, you're gonna see that he has a little reveal there in his hand. Maybe you didn't get a chance to pick these up and you're wishing you had, and you're wondering, okay, but what do they feel like, David? What do they feel like? I can't shove them through the screen. I wish I could. I wish I could let you hold them. The other thing I can do, though, is I can measure them. I can measure them and compare them against other decks, and maybe that might help you. If you remember the old deck, it was last year, the first deck, if I took 10 cards and put it in the caliper, it was 2, 7, 8. With this deck, 10 cards in the caliper is 2, 7, 5. So a little thinner, but probably it's just, you know, between last year and this year and caliper measurements and, you know, variations, they're probably exactly the same. It's probably gonna be the exact same thickness, the exact same feel as the first deck, and you probably won't notice any difference. I think one of the things you always have to think about is whenever you add anything to paper, it affects the feel and play of the cards, okay? And so when you talk about decks that have a lot of black or a lot of ink, anytime you add to paper, it affects the cards. So ink will always affect paper stock, okay? There's a lot of black on this deck, and there's gold foil on this deck. And to lay gold foil down on cards is a second pass. It doesn't all get printed at the same time. There's one pass with the color, and then one pass with the metallic ink. So that means the cards went through the press more than once, right? And there was a second layer of paint put on the backs. And so I think when you add metallic, it doesn't act the same as regular ink, so these cards will take some breaking in, okay, before they start to feel, you know, malleable and maneuverable in your hands. Well, that's everything I can say about the sophomore edition of the first playing cards from Chris Ramsay. Like I said, these cards did sell out, so if you're asking, oh, where can I find a deck? Your probably best bet is gonna be eBay. But don't let that stop you from going down to Chris Ramsay's YouTube channel, giving it a subscribe, following him on all his social media because he always puts out really fun content, and you can always check out his website for other merchandise as well. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.